There are certain people that you sit down to have a chat with, and even before you've started, you already know that the landscape of the conversation is going to be gloriously varied. In this Fishing for the Truth, I'm joined by Welsh singer-songwriter Steve Balsamo. What a lovely, lovely man, and what an incredible career he's had so far. Steve is known, loved and respected for his iconic portrayal of Jesus in the 1996 production of Jesus Christ Superstar at the Lyceum Theatre in London. Since then, Steve's gone on to write and perform with some incredible artists. My conversation with him went a lot further and a lot deeper than just the subject of music. So much so that even after a little bit of editing, I was left with so much footage that I decided to split it into two halves. So this is part one, and at the end of this video you can see some little tasters of what to expect in part two. I'd like to say a special thanks to Ben Robbins at the Umbrella Studios in the heart of London's West End for allowing Steve and I to use his space so that we could have our chat. This is the wonderful Steve Balsamo.
This is my truth. Tell me the truth. Tell me my truth. Tell me what the truth feels like. This is my truth. So I'm very excited to be here with you today. Lovely, lovely Steve, to talk about, amongst I'm sure many other things, because you do tell a good story, to talk about your solo EP, Circle the Wagons. And I didn't realise until I was looking on you've got a website dedicated to your solo music now, which is stevebalsamomusic.com.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise until I was looking on there that you're going to release hopefully 4 EPs over the next 12 months.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Which is exciting, but this is the first one, Circle the Wagons.
So the idea being that I'm writing songs every day, really. That's kind of what I love to do. One of my favourite things in the world is getting together in a room with some songwriters and literally with some alchemical kind of magical force, getting something out of the ether. At the end of the day, you leave the room and maybe there's something that has captured a bit of an emotional feeling, a memory, and then just, you know, moulding it into some sort of something beautiful, and then going out and playing it and seeing the reaction with other people. It's one of my favourite things. It's beautiful, beautiful thing. And there are 6 tracks on this EP? 6 on that. Which you've been kind enough to send me a few along the way, which, the title track especially, there's still something about that. I keep coming back to Circle the Wagons, and it's a really evocative song. It's a beautiful song. It's incredible. Is there a reason why that's the title track, and is there a common theme between the 6 pieces? There's always a common theme. The common theme, I think, is in this case me singing it, or some of the lyrics that I write. But that was an idea that Christian Phillips, a good songwriter friend of mine, he came to me and said, would I have a crack at writing some lyrics for this song? So I basically distilled his life into like 4 minutes. And it's one of my favourite things I've ever written, actually. The lyrics, sometimes songs come very quickly, and sometimes they take a long time to kind of mould and shape, and that one took a long time. I really poured over it, you know, days and days of notes on the lyrics, and then coming back to it and chipping away, and then getting rid of it all and then starting again, and it's one of my favourite things I've ever done. So that's why the first EP's Circle the Wagons. And I think it's going to be recorded by one of my favourite singers, Colin Blunstone, who's from a band called the Zombies. One of the greatest singers to ever come out of Britain, in my humble opinion, and he's expressed an interest to record it, which is a massive thrill for me. Wow. So lyrically, but did you, because the melody's so beautiful on that track as well. Well, that's Christian, that. Is it? Yeah, that's a lot of Christian's work. But the marriage of the two is just, it's amazing. Well, it's special. Well, some people say it's quite theatrical in the way that the chords kind of play, and so it's kind of a marriage of what I did before in my kind of previous life, if you like, and what I'm doing now. It's a nice little bridge of both, I think. Why I wanted to release an EP of solo stuff, I came out of a project. We put a project on ice, a girl and myself, Rosalie Dayton, a lovely folk singer, country singer, and I made an album for Ear Music, which is a German label, and we released that about 2 years ago, I think. So we did a bit of touring around that, so we put that project on ice, and I'm writing for other projects as well. Writing seems to be, you know, like a daily thing now. I'm kind of writing something every day, and there are a few projects that I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into.
Right.
And one of our songs has just been covered by Cliff Richard. Now, when I was a kid, my mum was a huge Cliff Richard fan, and
Right.
there are a few strands to this story. So I was about 10 years of age, and I was on my way to school, standing outside my mate Paul Cornelius's house, and I found a wallet on the floor. So there was no money in it, but there were some cards. So I took it to school, I gave it to the headmaster, and a few hours later they called me out of class, and it turns out it was Melvin Hayes, who was in Swansea doing, I think it was Babes in the Wood, and we're talking probably about 1984, 83 or something. It was a long time ago. So I was a massive fan of Melvin Hayes, because he was in Summer Holiday.
Yes, of
and
course.
a bunch of stuff with Cliff back in the day.
The little guy.
The little guy.
Yeah, sorry.
And he was also a character in a Welsh cartoon called Super Ted. I think he played the skeleton in that. Anyway, so I was a massive fan. So we got to go and meet Melvin Hayes, and he was really nice, and because I found his gold American Express card and all this, it was fun. So I remember talking to him about Cliff then, and you know, he was excited that I knew stuff about it. Anyway, my mum, who was a massive fan, she said, "Oh, one day, love, you'll record one of your songs." So years later, when I was playing Jesus in town, Cliff came to see the show. My mum was absolutely, you know, over the moon. It's like, you made it, Cliff's come. So anyway, Cliff, he was playing Heathcliff at the time. He invited us over to see his show, and we had some fun, and we went and watched it. It was great. And my mum got ill then with cancer, lover, and Cliff heard that, and he sent my mum a card at a real kind of crossroads time. She was very ill. She lost all her hair and stuff, and she died not long after. But he sent this lovely card saying, "Oh, I hope you're feeling okay, Elaine." And it was a lovely moment, because I had the card and I knew who it was from. And I said, "Hey mum, there's a card here for you." She said, "Who's that from, love?" I said, "Check it out, have a look." So she opened it up. She went, "Jesus Christ, it's from Cliff." I said, "I wouldn't say that in front of Cliff, you know, man." But anyway.
What a lovely thing to do.
So then, yeah, it was a very lovely thing. So I wrote the song with Ben, whose studio we're in today, and another guy called Peter Wright, about 5 years ago. It's called Gonna Be Alright. And 6 months, 7 months ago, Peter called me and said, "Oh, I think the song's on hold for Cliff." Because sometimes how it works is you write some songs, and if you have a song publisher and they hear that somebody's looking for songs, then they'll pitch the song.
Right.
But with someone like Cliff, who still sells a lot of albums, it's quite a prestigious thing to get on. So anyway, I didn't hold out much hope. I knew the song was good and it was catchy. And I went back and listened to it, and I thought, yeah, it's a really catchy song. And then it kind of went through the next stage and the next stage, and then we got a call saying he's cut the song. So I can't wait to go and see him, and hopefully see him again, and tell him the story about how he'd probably forgotten writing the card to my dear old mum, but it meant such a lovely thing. It was such a lovely thing to do.
So, do your kind of psychic abilities come from your mum then? Because is that a prediction? Her saying he's going to record one of your songs, or? So
anyway, listen, I'm really interested in psychic phenomena, psi phenomena. I'm very interested in the old ways of the kind of wise or the cunning folk of the villages, and very into the old folk magic. That's really one of my deep loves. And the idea, the sense of place, is a thing called psychogeography, how the sense of place can influence especially art, and especially the stuff I do.
Right.
Where, you know, London, for example, is a great psychogeographical city, that the kind of history of the layers of everything it's underneath kind of still informs what's going on today.
Yeah.
Where we are near Shaftesbury Avenue, this is kind of the theatre land, but you know, a couple of 100 years ago when the plague was happening, they buried there's like plague graves just about a couple of 100 yards that way. So all of that,
like residual energy, or
well, possibly,
or, I don't know.
but even kind of the ghosts of the past. You know, metaphorical ghosts will still be kind of playing their part, or kind of telling their stories. So sometimes we can kind of tap into that.
Right.
So I'm very interested in that, and I'll tell you a story which sounds as mad as hell, and it is as mad as hell, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. So when I was playing Jesus, because I did it for a year, so it's like 400 performances. So about 200 performances in, during the crucifixion scene, I was on the cross and I was looking out and I was giving the lines, and I looked into the auditorium, and what was staring back at me was like this demon's face. It sounds weird as hell, and it kind of was there for a few seconds. I blinked my eyes, it was still there, blinked my eyes again, and it had gone. Now I thought, because I was wearing the crown of thorns, the blood was kind of dripping into my eyes and it was kind of making some sort of optical illusion.
Right.
But when I blinked my eyes and this kind of demon's face was kind of looking back at me, I thought two things. Either I'd gone mad, or somebody'd slipped a Mickey Finn into my, my tea, and I was tripping my tits off.
Right.
As Jesus on the stage in Lyceum. So it really spooked me, and I never told anybody about it for years, because I thought I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
So years, and the Lyceum Theatre, is, again, a very historical place and lots of history. So it wasn't until years later that I was reading about the history of the Lyceum Theatre. I'm very interested in tarot cards, and I'm very interested in one of the most famous deck of tarot cards. Used to be called the Rider-Waite deck, but it's now called the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, after Pamela Coleman Smith, who was a beautiful artist,
right,
who designed the cards, and for years she died penniless. It's an amazing story in itself, and should be told one day in some sort of theatrical thing, in my opinion. But it's a beautiful story. So it turned out, and I love her artwork, and I love the history of this woman, and her, and her story. And it turned out she was a set designer at the Lyceum Theatre, and for me that was a massive thrill.
Yeah.
So then, more than that, she was part of a magical group in London called the Golden Dawn. People like, there's an infamous magician called Aleister Crowley was involved, and there was Oscar Wilde was involved, and W.B. Yeats, the Irish poet, was also involved. So it was a very kind of quasi-Masonic movement that happened at the turn of the century. So reading more about the history of the Lyceum then, it turns out that there was an actor called Henry Irving who ran the place back in the day, turn of the century, and he managed Bram Stoker, who apparently had some of the inspiration for Dracula at the Lyceum. And in fact, the Lyceum Theatre was the first place that Dracula was performed as a play. So at that point I went cold, because I thought, bloody hell, maybe I saw whatever that was lingering kind of demon, because the main kind of feature of this demon's face was it had two pointy teeth, and I thought, my God, maybe during the crucifixion scene, which is a very archetypal and very well-known scene of kind of history, people were kind of in the moment kind of looking up, 2,000 people in the theatre, kind of in expectation, looking up at me delivering these lines. There was almost a veil that could have been lifted from this world to the next, and I might have seen what was lingering in the place. So that in itself is kind of psychogeography in action. Right. The idea that that sense of place, the Lyceum Theatre still holds the ghost or the kind of something.
Yeah.
The feeling of Dracula, and
wow.
I saw something that I saw it myself. So that kind of got me into really thinking about, well, maybe this reality isn't just the only reality we're in. Maybe there's other stuff that influences us.
Yeah.
The materialist reductionist scientist thinks it's all a load of nonsense, but there'd be too many things in my life for me to think that's the case. I think there's something that can interface with us,
right? If
we allow it to, or if indeed we somehow, reach across and say hello. I think something, the other, will interface with us.
Yeah, there's got to be an openness, though, hasn't there?
I think, not seeing is believing. I think believing is seeing. If you believe it, then I think it will occur.
Right.
But it tripped me out, man.
I bet it did. And then you had to obviously carry on with the scene or the song.
Well, that was the end of the show, and I just went home and thought maybe I've been working too hard, or But I really think I saw something that was strange or paranormal. I really think I did.
Has has that interest in the, because it says on your Twitter description, doesn't it? Is it Metaphysical Ponderer?
Ponderer.
Does your interest in that, does that manifest itself through your writing, or does that inform how you sometimes approach a song? Or
I think all art is magic. I think everything that certainly I endeavour to create certainly comes from somewhere else, and in some ways kind of filtered through the process or myself or the people I'm working with. So I think it's all magical.
Yeah.
I think I'm very interested in that, in stuff, in thinking. I like to think. and yes, that does inform how I write songs.
I was going to say, it's probably a blessing then if you're that way inclined that you write and do this for a living, because it's got to be an outlet surely. Otherwise I feel like where would all that stuff go if you couldn't express it creatively?
I think I'm very lucky that I do this, and because I do this I have a chance to think about stuff, because basically I just think things into existence. Songs start as a thought, and then they're somewhere, and you kind of bring them in, and all of a sudden they exist as a few chords or a bit of a melody. So I spend every day thinking, and before that I studied art in college, and so it's kind of very much shaping the invisible, we used to call it. The idea that we kind of bring stuff in from nowhere.
Yeah, I forget that about you, that it wasn't singing from a young age.
No.
Which is, your voice, I can't remember who I was talking to about it. Your voice for me is a bit like, for anybody who hasn't heard Steve's voice yet, a bit like breathing. So you open your mouth and it feels as natural to listen to as a breath.
That's nice.
That I'm not saying for one second I think it's easy, but there's something incredibly organic and authentic about it. So for you not to have discovered that for yourself until later in life, that just astounds me.
Well, the story of that was, I've always loved to sing, and when I was a kid, I've got 3 brothers. Michael was a happy accident, and Andrew and myself. Andrew started singing first, he was in bands. Right. And then I looked at him going, I want to try that. And I remember his first band, I was painting the backdrop, and the band was rock and roll. This was in school. And our old teacher, Peter Lewis, who was a real instigator of music and fun, he was the physics teacher. And I remember him used to go, physics is life. And I'm like, yeah, rock and roll is life. He was like, physics is life. Now looking back, he was absolutely right. Physics is life. But anyway, that's another story. And I saw him and I told him that. Oh. But my late mum used to say that before going to sleep, I used to sing from a tiny baby. I used to just sing and sing and sing. And she used to sing in Ice Edwards when she was a kid, and won some awards and stuff. And there's something about my mum's unfulfilled desires that this is part of, I think, the reason why I carried it through, I think. And it's funny now with my kids, Frankie and Izzy, especially with Frankie, I've noticed him singing himself to sleep, and I'm going, God, that's what must have been what I've been doing. But he comes to the studio with me, and my dad was a chef, my mum was a housewife bringing up the kids, so there was never ever an outlet to kind of pursue it. It was a different time then, and but so I didn't start singing until very late, till I was about 19, because when I was in school I wasn't allowed to be in the choir, the school choir. And I remember when I signed to Sony Records, the guy came in and he was writing a kind of biography. He said, hey, tell me something about yourself. And I was like, well, I didn't start singing until a few years ago. And he was like, okay, why? I said, well, Mrs. Richards, the teacher, didn't allow me in the choir. And he said, oh, that's interesting. And he wrote it down. And I did some interviews, and all of a sudden it was all over. Oh, and so much so that every interview was like, well, tell me about Mrs. Richards now, isn't... And I was like, oh, God. So much so that dear old Mrs. Richards rang my mum and said, can you tell Steve to shut it? So then we ended up on a TV show for Sky One with Davina McCall, which was called something like Forgiveness Show or something, where Sony saw it as an opportunity for me to kind of play the latest single. And I ended up speaking to Mrs. Richards on TV, and she said, I didn't say it. And I'm like, well, you kind of did. She said, I didn't. And I was like, I think you did. So it went around.
That's awkward.
Very awkward. But and it exists somewhere, which is even more bloody awkward.
I'm going to Google that.
I tried, I looked for it.
Oh, okay.
So Davina, if you're ever watching, I'd love to see that again. It was terrible. You were great, we were terrible. But the funny thing, to kind of cap it all off, we lived in London for years, so we moved back when Izzy, my daughter, was young, and I was taking her to school over the first couple of weeks. And bear in mind, it wasn't ever my intention to move back to Wales. We go back, so she'd been in school not very long, and a teacher came to me and said, "Oh, Izzy's got a lovely voice." I said, "Oh, thanks." And then she said, "By the way, you know my great aunt." I said, "Who's that?" She said, "Mrs. Richards."
Oh, God's sake.
So, but I went, "Oh my God." I said, "Oh, is she all right?" "Yeah, she told me about the television show." I was like, "Oh my God." But what I thought was great was it kind of closed the circle.
Right.
And she said, "Oh, she got a lovely voice." So it kind of finished it really, really neatly.
Funny.
But I thought, what are the chances of that?
That's kind of beautifully weird, isn't it?
It's weird. It's all weird. So I think my life within, and why I'm a metaphysical ponderer, is every day is kind of marked by a series of very interesting coincidences or synchronicities, every single day. And I take them as kind of signposts, and I look at them and go, okay, that's an interesting, what was the learning in that, and what's that all about?
Because everybody moves through each day, but not everybody will recognise events or occurrences as signs.
I think I'm a hippie, really, deep down. I think that's, but I do, I think.
Because I agree, but I know not everybody.
No,
There's a resource there that's available to us all
absolutely.
the time, whether we choose to see it or tap into it or not.
To listen to it, I think. You know, and again, going back to that kind of folk magic, the cunning folk, they would definitely do that. They would look at nature and see what was coming, and something happened recently, which my dear Uncle Tony passed away, and Uncle Tony was my godfather. But more than that, he was an instigator of fun. He was a great guy. Lived in London for years. When I was auditioning years ago for shows and didn't have, you know, 2 pennies to rub together, he paid for me to come to London, and during the superstar audition process, which was about a year, it's about 14 auditions over a year, he paid for me to come up, and all, you know, so he was very much part of it. He was the guy I called when I got the gig and said, "Come on, man, let's go and have a drink." So, and of course, when I did a few more shows after that, he was always at the opening night party and stuff, and it was great. But he went to school with Anthony Hopkins, which I only found out a few years ago.
Ah, okay.
And anyway, Uncle Tony passed away. A few days, and he was ill, but we didn't think he would pass away. A few days before, my Auntie Jo rang me up and said, "Oh, Steve, I know you'd understand this." And I said, "What's that? What's that?" And he said, "Oh, I was out having a cigarette this morning at about 5 o'clock, and a crow came right next to me and kind of just sat there, and kind of was there for about 5 minutes just looking at me." She said, "You know what that means, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." So then I said to my friends and my wife, I said, "Tony's going to go," and he went, I think, the next morning. So the idea that, you know, in other cultures and in our history, portents like that, people would have paid attention to it. And another thing, which again freaked the hell out of me, was when my father-in-law was ill. He had cancer, and this is about 3 years ago. He was in hospital, and he was unwell, and everyone had gone to bed, and you know, it's a very sad time. And when death comes close, you know, time gets a bit strange. It kind of goes a bit weird, and especially in kind of Welsh folklore, and I know in Irish folklore, they talk about you getting the call, of the banshee calls, and I've always been interested in that because it's definitely part of their folklore. So my wife had gone to bed, and she was obviously very upset because her dad was very ill, and I was tidying up the place, doing the dishes and stuff before, and we have a window by the sink, and we have the kind of French doors to the other side, and I heard 3 loud knocks on both the window and the French door at the same time, and it really shocked me. So I ran outside, thought somebody had run around the back of the house, and there was nobody there. And then I thought, my God, that's the knock. That's the portent. And the next morning, we had a phone call from the hospital, and Trace said, "Oh, I'll get the kids ready for school." I said, "No, you got to go now, because he's going to go now." And he went, just after she got there. So, was it a coincidence? Did I make it up in my mind? Did I hear it? I think I heard it physically.
Yeah.
And that is very indicative of ancient folklore.
Right.
And I think I heard it. Well, I know I heard it.
I was going to say, you did, though.
Yeah.
I think often we can sense things or and then reason it away with our kind of once the logical thinking brain kicks in. But you've got to go with your gut in that moment, and you know that.
I do believe we interface with the other. I don't know what that is, but in my experience, I've definitely experienced they call it high strangeness, many cases of high strangeness, weirdness, kind of ghosty kind of thing, if you want to look at it like that, and things like this that kind of feed into an ancient kind of folklore that I'm aware of, but I'd never experienced before. But I definitely heard that knock.
So why? There are some people who will be listening to this who will it will resonate with them, and they won't think it's strange at all. And then there are other people who will think it's completely kooky.
It is,
but why is it that things like that should seem strange now when there was a time when they wouldn't have done? What is it that's happened to our consciousness, or our... not consciousness, that's the wrong word.
We'll go into that in a sec.
What has happened to the world and culture that we live in that we don't...
Well, scientific understanding, which is essential and brilliant, and has afforded us incredible breakthroughs and leaps in our understanding of the universe and how we work and so on. But people like John Dee, for example, who was Queen Elizabeth I's right-hand man, confidant. He was an alchemist, and he was into magic. He was into a thing called high magic, and he claimed that he could speak with angels, the angelic realm. And he and a guy called Edward Kelly, who was kind of this kind of medium character, they for years tried to communicate with something else, and did successfully apparently communicate with the angelic realm, and formed a system of magical understanding called Enochian. They had a language that they worked out.
Right.
He was a scientist. He was one of our most eminent and brilliant kind of thinkers of all time. I think what the scientific, and who am I? I'm a singer songwriter. I just think about stuff. But from where I'm looking, removing any sort of magical thinking out of science can't be right.
Right.
For me, it can't. Of course, science wants to measure everything, and wants to be able to kind of look at it and understand it. Maybe where we're at, we can't understand everything.
Right.
I think and I'm not saying God, because that's such a heavily loaded word.
Right.
And a concept, but a lot of people have experienced some weird shit that they can't explain, that flies in the face of reductionist scientific understanding.
Yeah.
The idea that it can all be measured, it can all be maybe some things can't. Love can't be measured really.
Yeah.
So what is that? But we all feel it at some point in our lives.
And that's the key, isn't it, though, to feel it? I think if you... Is that not the answer, but is that the thing that we've lost sight of as far as being in touch with how we feel? As opposed to our conscious thoughts, to be aware of that awareness.
I think...
Oh, that's not a very...
I'm with you. I think because we're so, and I'm the first to say I'm addicted to technology in my phone, but sometimes I've got to go and walk in the woods, so I've got to go and put my feet in the sea. We live by the sea in Swansea, which is, a beautiful part of the world. I can walk on the beach, and I can be in woods, and I can be up a mountain within half an hour, so I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
So I find I've got to go, sometimes reconnect with with where we are on this beautiful planet. But you mentioned about consciousness, that the idea, what is consciousness? What is it, and where is it? That's, I think science looks at it as the hard problem. They call it, you know, because they don't know where it is or what it is. They used to think it originates in the brain, but they don't know where it is. There's a guy I know, a writer called Rupert Sheldrake, and he looks at these things. He came from a scientific background, and he's a professor of biology, I think, and he's written some excellent books trying to bridge the gap.
Okay.
You know, and there's a rise in atheism. I'm much more agnostic about it. Maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't. Maybe what I've experienced is high strangeness or some sort of paranormal phenomenon. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's some sort of, maybe when I saw the demon's face that I thought it was, maybe it was blood in my eye, which I thought for a long time. And then it was a coincidence that I kind of happened to be reading about the Lyceum Theatre, and then all of that kind of fitted into, I made it fit my model. Maybe that's the case. But all I'm saying is I'm open to the possibility that it's not just cut and dried, because I don't think reality is cut and dried. I think, what is reality?
Maybe we're not supposed to completely get it though.
That's what I think.
I think if we got it, then why are we?
and for years I thought, well, when we die, we'll be given some sort of vision of what it was all about. I don't think that's going to happen either.
Right.
I don't think that's it either.
I don't, but then I think for that to happen, death would have to be the final kind of end game, and I don't think it is.
No, do I. I don't think it is either.
Oh, this is...
Anyway, we were supposed to be talking about music.
Yeah, anyway, the EP.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, we've digressed a little bit, but that's good.
Yeah, that's what it's about. So that's metaphysical pondering for me. That's what I like to think about when I'm not trying to write some words that kind of make sense to me and convey some sort of meaning. But I think it all feeds in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, because then I thought, Christ, I haven't done any of this before. I must be here for a reason. I had long hair and looked a bit like this, but younger. I had long hair and I could sing really high. So that's the reason I'm here. You know, I look a bit like a Western idea of Jesus, and I can sing like Ted Neely and Ian Gillan. So I'm alright, I've got something going for me. But then the other stuff, the truth of it then, was a longer process for me to understand. So I was kind of like this, hunched up in this position when I was painting the skirting board. And I did the big scream, and I instantly burst into tears. Because there's something about being in that position, kind of the fetal position on the floor when I was doing that, and that note had finished. It kind of brought up all the emotion that I used to remember. So I was literally crying like a baby on the floor.
Wow.
Before I went, na 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 na. So I had to get up and sing to stop myself bloody crying. It's crazy. But I think that's what I've done so many times, it's still locked in the muscles, you know.
Oh, that's amazing.
What we're doing, this art that we're creating, is not about, God, doesn't that sound great, or isn't that chord progression great, what's a clever little lyric? It's beyond that. It is that key to open up, or possibly a key to open up a place into somewhere else. You know, it's a.
I think music does that like nothing else. So
yeah,
it has a power and a language of its own that can do that for people, which is incredible.
Some people write songs and you want to dance. And I just want to break your heart open. That's what I want to do.
That's beautiful though. But as far as you and the biggest influences on you and the person that you're continuing to evolve to be, have your children, for example, been teachers for you?
Oh, yeah. Every day having a teenage girl is a is the biggest lesson in how not to be a murderer. Some new stuff and some old stuff, but it's all about the song. And the music I really love is kind of the Americana thing and the kind of country thing, or the dark alternative country.
Right.
So it's all about the storytelling, it's all about the lyrics, and yeah, and just trying to get the truth, man. 3 chords and the truth. That's what it's about.
The truth. How apt for this Fishing for the Truth episode.
Yeah.